Welcome to My Life, Tanya Applied with Rabbi Simon Jacobson, a journey into the deepest teachings of Torah and their application to our personal, emotional, and psychological lives.
A gute Woche and a gute Jahr, a good week and a good year. We continue our journey in the life-changing Sefer Tanya. Being that it's Mitzvah Shabbos Bereishis, and there's an expression from the Rabbeim, Wie man stellt sich weg Shabbos Bereishis, azay geht es. The way we establish ourselves in this Shabbos Bereishis, that's how it goes. We'll begin speaking about that, and then we'll from that transition into Tanya. This program is made possible by Rena Lights LLC, and it's an honor and memory of the man that really initiated this program a few years ago, who sadly passed away just last week. Rab Shmuel Yosef Littman Plotkin, Olav Shalom, son of the famous Rav Agon, Rav Chosid, Rab Avram Eliyahu Plotkin. He was interred in Sfas, near his father, and it's in his schools that this program began in the first place. He's the one that called me, initiated it, had his son, who's now sitting Shiva for his father, sponsor it. So I wanted to first and foremost acknowledge him. May Hashem protect his soul, protect his family, and in schus of all the great things he has done. A shliach in Barditchev, many good mitzvahs, many good deeds, including this shir in Tanya. May it serve him well. And may he in turn serve us all well and help us have a very blessed year. Gebenchte Jahr, b'tev hanira v'hanigla, only beautiful, good things all revealed, until we ultimately, the greatest good is the Geula Amitis V'Ashlema, which comes in schus of Yefutza Meinesecha Chutza, of learning Tanya, learning Chassidus, teaching Chassidus, spreading Chassidus. And everyone should have a good Gebenchte Jahr. With that, let us talk about Shabbos Bereishis. As I said, Shabbos Bereishis, Wie man stellt sich weg, Shabbos Bereishis, azay geht es. Why? Why is the Shabbos Bereishis such an instrumental and critical Shabbos? That the way you establish yourself in this Shabbos, that's how the rest of the year goes. So firstly, the very name, Shabbos Bereishis. Bereishis means the beginning. Not just beginning, the head, Reishis. Just like Tishrei is the Eisius, the letters of Reishis. And Rosh Hashanah, Reish. So Bereishis, the end of the month of Tishrei, is the beginning, and that's indeed what the Parsha simply means, as we read today, that in the beginning God created heaven and earth. But it's more than that. That is the beginning of everything, God creating heaven and earth. With a purpose, as we learn, as we continue reading, creating all the 6 days of creation, finally with the human being, Adam HaChava, placed on earth, La'ovda L'Shamra, to serve and to protect, through the Ramach Mitzvah Seseh, Min Shasal Mitzvah Leisaseh, and transform this world and make it into a Dira B'Tachtenim, a home in this lowest of world, a home for the divine. And more than a home, a garden, Ligani, Basa Ligani. To take Gan Eden, make it blossom and flourish and spread to the entire world. So this Parsha captures the very essence of the purpose of existence, the very beginning of existence. So that's why in time, as we begin the new year, going from Tishrei into Cheshvan, it's also Shabbos Avarchim Cheshvan, Bereishis carries all the holidays and into the year, into the new year, which explains why when we how we establish ourselves Shabbos Bereishis, that's how it goes, because it's a central Shabbos in that sense. So on this Shabbos, and now we are Mitzvah Shabbos, and going into this week, gives us additional power to carry and channel all the energies we received in Rosh Hashanah, and before that in Elul, as says Simei Tshuva after Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, the 4 days between Yom Kippur and Sukkot, which are also considered special days when Yidden are Esek b'mitzvahs, Sukkah, Lulav, Then the 7 days of Sukkot leading into Shana Rabbah, Shmini Atzeres, and then Simchas Torah, all are channeled through Shabbos Bereishis into the year, into Shemayim V'Aretz. Bereishis Bara Elokim is Shemayim V'Aretz. As we read on Simchas Torah, we concluded the Torah, Le'enei Kol Yisrael, and began immediately Bereishis Bara Elokim. And in this Shabbos, we read the whole parsha. As the Alter Rebbe says, living with the times, to live with the leb mit the Zeit, to live with the times means with the parsha you learn in this time. So that's the theme that we live with. And our achlotas, our resolutions that we've taken through in this entire month. A month that was meruba b'meidis, filled with holidays. Muzba bakel, chedesh hashvi, as the Medrash says in Vayikra Rabbah, muzba. It's sated, it's rich with everything. All the holidays. And that's why the whole Tishrei we don't say Tachnun. To carry that into the year, that's Bereishis. And that's where we are right now. So you can understand the potency and the power of this period in time. And with that, let us now move into what we're up to in Tanya. Seder Kavua. So we are now at a new chapter, about to begin chapter 29, Perek Chof Tes. We finished Perek Chof Ches last week. Now we go into Perek Chof Tes. Now, just before we go into the actual chapter, a few introductions. Keep in mind that Perek Chavov in Tanya started a new section in Tanya itself. The whole basis of Tanya is to show us how Torah mitzvahs, godliness, is karvei lecha, accessible, relevant to each one of us. That's why it's also named, it's called Sefer Shel Beinim, because Beinanim, something is within the reach of each one of us. Midas kol adam v'acharei kol adam yimshach. This is the feature of every person, the characteristic of every person, and every person is drawn to it, as he said in chapter 14 in Tanya. And what's a Beini? A Beini is not someone who doesn't have a Yetzer Hara, doesn't have a Nefesh Habamis. As Alter Rebbe elaborated, he has an animal soul. So therefore immediately it means it's relevant to each one of us because we have an animal soul. And it's active. However, we don't allow it, a Beini does not allow it to affect its thought, speech, and action. Deliberate thought, speech, and action. Deliberate thought. So there'll be inadvertent thoughts, but the Beini has self-mastery, self-control. So it's the epitome of what a human being like us can achieve. A tzaddik is a unique type of individual, a person who's destroyed his Yetzer Hara, killed the Yetzer Hara. And in tzaddik itself there are levels, as he explained in chapter 10. So the first 25 chapters of Tanya talk all about the Beinani, how to become a Beinani, and the different aspects of it, and Meir Shal Talev, and the person who controls and is able to give birth to emotions, than a person who can't give full emotions. So it's Talumet Libe, emotions that you feel, at least you don't feel the love and the reverence of God directly, but you feel that it's worthy of love and God is worthy of love and reverence, and that brings you to Allah Seisei. Then there's the Ava Mesuteres, the inherent love of God everyone has subconsciously within themselves. And explain how all that affects each person. But then there are forces, other forces that are at work. All part of the Nefesh Habamis is conspiracies and strategies and ploys to distract us and weaken us. So in chapter 26, the Alter Rebbe began to address what are these difficulties that we face. Even if we were to employ all the tools we have, which includes the Moich Shal Talev, the Aved of a person, that he gives birth to emotions, and the divine soul is conquering the small city, Ir Ktanu Ze'aguf, and it dominates over the animal soul. And even when you also use Ava Mesuteres, the inherent love within each one of us. But then there's other things. The Yetzer Hara has always a trick up its sleeve. Melech Zaken Nechsil. It's a very shrewd king. That's fighting, of course, the king called the Nefesh Elokis. Two kings fighting over the control over the city. And he employs the tool of negative thoughts. Atzvus. which leads to atzlus and kavdus, as the Alter Rebbe began in chapter 26. It leads to sluggishness, to a certain negative impression. It weakens you. So even if you have all the strengths, like he said there, when two people are wrestling and one is stronger than the other, but if he's down, talk about psychological warfare. He feels weak, he feels demoralized, feels down. That will cause him to lose the match, even if he's technically stronger. So the Alter Rebbe goes through in a methodical way, chapter 26, 27, and 28, all the different ways that can lead, all the different negative thoughts that a person may have, whether it's from his life circumstances, negative things that happen to him, so he begins to weaken his resolve, or her resolve. That's Milah de Alma. Then there's Milah de Shmaya. No, that he sinned. So the Yetzer Hara uses that as well. You're a sinner. Who do you think you are? And that further demoralizes a person. And the Alter Rebbe addressed that. How to address? Well, the first thing he addressed by saying that there's a deeper good, even in the negative, and a person has to always find that deeper good. The chsadim, the starim. But Milah de Shemaya, he said, there's a time for accountability. And it's not just if it's just coming out of nowhere, it means it's trying to bring you down. It's coming from a bad place. Then in chapter 27, it spoke continued about matters of a person having not necessarily demoralized by Avedis, but by the mere fact that he has bad thoughts. Bad thoughts throughout the day, and that too, where's that coming from? It's only coming to demoralize you. The Alter Rebbe goes step by step in explaining how a person can overcome all these challenges. And the mere fact that you have them, that should make you even stronger. A simcha, because it means you have the power of restraint which reaches the deepest, highest levels. And finally, in Perek Chav Ches we learned, what about these negative thoughts during davening, during learning, during avodas Hashem? When you're supposed to be besimcha, so that too is coming from a negative place. But that shouldn't make you feel down. That should just make you feel that that's what happens when you start strengthening your nefesh halikis during Aveda. The other side is going to come to put up opposition. And he explains how to deal with that in chapter 28. And finally, the end of chapter 28, that after all, and what you have to do is push away these thoughts, not try to elevate them. Like he said, that's for tzaddikim. Not allow them to bring you down, but to push them aside. And if you still, there's one more thing that you daven to Hashem, you pray to Hashem to help you have compassion and your neshama to give you strength to deal with these challenges. As we learned at the end of chapter 28. Now the Alter Rebbe enters another aspect of things that can disturb our ability to serve God properly. And that's called Timtum Halev. Timtum Halev, which literally means a desensitized heart, a blocked heart. What is he coming to address? So what is he coming to add here that he hasn't discussed? So in the beginning of chapter 26, when he spoke about atzvus, the sadness, the depression, the negative thoughts, he mentioned, and that which leads a person to be sluggish and not motivated, to become apathetic. He said, there's something that also comes from Timtum Halev Ko'evan in chapter 26. That his heart is desensitized or blocked like a stone. But there he didn't elaborate. Now he's going to elaborate. So you could say, what is this different than the demoralization or the negative thought that come from negative thoughts? So as we'll see, this goes deeper into the picture. Because you can have negative thoughts, and that weakens you from doing what you have to do. That doesn't necessarily mean, however, that you're inspired. Doesn't necessarily mean that you're feeling for it. So you still can be a Beinoni if you get rid of the negative thoughts and don't let them affect you. Whatever they come from, mil d'shmaya, mil d'alma, mil d'shmaya, whether it's from material, from your life situation, or whether it's from spiritual matters, or the negative thoughts coming from the fact that you have negative thoughts. So that's dealing with that, as the Alter Rebbe spelled out each case what you're supposed to do. But now we're talking about thing that you need to have inspiration, enthusiasm, passion. So there's another thing called Timtum Alev. Now, where is this passion especially necessary? There's a lot of mitzvahs that we do that. The main thing is Maisa, to do it. So there you do need motivation, and you can't have the negative thoughts will weaken your resolve, demoralize you. So we have to counter that. The different ways the Alter Rebbe told us how to counter that. But then there are mitzvahs that need specifically passion. Namely, when we daven, which is Aveda Shebelev, there you need not just lip service of the heart, and secondly, to sanctify even the permissible things that you do. We talked about this earlier. There are things that you're not allowed to do. So there we already have the eitzes, the solution, how not to let depression cause you to become lax and do something, God forbid, prohibited. But in order to sanctify your healthy life, you could say to yourself, you know what? I'm already fine. Why do I have to do it with more passion or with more excitement? Or like, why do I have to send? It's one thing, okay, I have to avoid negative things. But to do positive things, like let's say eating or sleeping or work, there you're doing something that's not prohibited, but you're not doing it l'shem shamayim necessarily, or with the fullest, deepest divine intentions. So there you need more than just action, more than just fighting the negative thoughts of atzvus. There the Timtum Alev comes into play, because it's stopping you from having an emotional experience, to have unmolding with God. It's like, think of it, let's say, use an example, a good example always between our relationship with Hashem, which is like a marriage. Yem chasanos is matan teira. Use an example of spouses in marriage. It's one thing each partner does what they have to do that they're obligated to do. Okay, that's beautiful, because a lot of people don't even do that. But it's another thing is to have a passionate enthusiasm, something that comes with love and comes with a whole emotional experience. Not just getting by, not just automatic pilot, but even if it's not automatic pilot, not just getting by in action. And that's where Lev, how do you inspire the heart? So this takes us back, if you think about it, to earlier chapters where he talked about that as well. If you remember, he spoke about, I mentioned before, Talumas Libe, where you can't really get your heart fully ignited in love or reverence of Hashem, Ava V'yireh, but at least that you know it's worthy, you osole. Or you're able to awaken the latent and dormant love of Ava Mesoteres within a person. But that's something already within you. Timtum Alev is a force that stops us from having the full emotional experience. And God doesn't just want us to be action-oriented. Obviously, Amaisu Iker. But together with action has to come feeling. V'ahavtas Hashem Elokecha, b'chol levavcha, b'chol nafshecha, b'chol meidecha. That's an emotional experience. That's much more than just action-based, with a little, perhaps, emotion. So Timtum Alev is another force that we have to contend with. And here again you see the methodical way the Alter Rebbe goes ahead and looks at all the forces, not just what you should be doing, but also how to eliminate the enemy. Because remember, back in chapter 9, he said it's a battle between the Nefesh Elikis and Nefesh Habamis. So it's not just a battle. Nefesh Elikis will dominate with its persuasive and its strategic dominance over the Nefesh Habamis. You also want to counter, like in every battle, you need also the defense against the enemy's attack, and anticipating and preempting it. So the Alter Rebbe addressed Atzvus in chapters 26, 27, and 28. Now he addresses Timtum Alev. And with that, let's begin the chapter. Perek Chavtes. Says the Alter Rebbe, However, Oid achas tzarich losis eitzes benafshis habeinanim. There's one other area that we have to, that the Beinanim need to take counsel from their souls. It's based on a verse in Tehillim, Yud Gimel Gimel. Eitzes benafshis habeinanim. Eitzes benafshis. In addition to the advice we've given till now, the counsel we've given till now, Asher lepomim, and this is a result of Shalapomim v'itim rabim, that there's periodically and frequently yeshlem timtum alev, that the person will have a desensitized heart. Shanasa ke'evan, as if it were a stone. It becomes like stone, like a heart of stone, stone-hearted. So when you say a heart, the heart is a heart of flesh. It feels something, but sometimes it just doesn't penetrate, doesn't pierce your heart. We have many experiences where you think about and contemplate on something that's positive, and it awakens an emotional reaction. But then there's a person who's like a stone. Nothing, it doesn't awaken an emotional reaction. Now, generally speaking, if something's happening to you, it's just like you go over to a warm fire. The warmth of the fire will warm you. If it doesn't warm you, it means there's some obstacle. There's some impediment in the way. You need something to eliminate. Like a person doesn't feel a physical sensation, something's there that's blocking it. Now, psychologically, emotionally, the same thing. If someone doesn't feel, that means there's a block. That's called timtum alev. In a mimer from the Frierdiker Rebbe, he uses these words: "Shalavove otu melekablas ha'asoga u'leseir b'mida ruya lias ma'asoga hi." His heart is like closed, sealed, from accepting the contemplation that he had and awakening him the proper emotion that should come from that thought. So there's now an impediment. So it becomes like a leva evan, a heart of stone. V'lo yochel liftech libei v'shum efen laveda shebelev zu tefillah. Laveda shebelev zu tefillah. And he can't find any way, shum efen, to emotionally connect with prayer, which is called the service of the heart, as the Gemara says in Tainus, right at the beginning, Beis Amud Aleph. That's one effect that the timtum alev has. Another, v'gam, l'pomim la'yuchel elochim im ha'yetzer. And this timtum alev, this outside block, that's not impediment, some that are unable to let the person to put up a fight against the evil inclination. L'kadesh atzmei b'muter le, to sanctify himself through that which is permissible to you. So that which is not prohibited, so you can have things that can motivate you. You don't want to do anything against God. But it doesn't mean you're going to necessarily have emotional connection. But because of this, timtum alev mepnei kavdus shebelibe, due to a sluggishness in the person's heart. So there you have the timtum alev that can affect both aveda shebelev zu tefillah, and the second thing that affects could also, at times, affect that he can't fight his yetzer to the point. Could fight his yetzer not to do something negative. Because the negative atzvos and negative thoughts that we discussed in the previous chapters, we have the eitzes for that. But here, to go to the extent and say, not just that I won't do something negative, I will love God to the point that everything I do, even the things that are permissible, will be done with the deepest level of divine commitment. That's where the Kavdas Alev, the Timtum Alev, has an effect. So what's the Eitzah? So what's the advice for all of this? How do you get rid of this, we'll call it a disease, this illness, this blockage? Physically, for example, something that blocks, God forbid, the circulation of the blood. So he says, "V'zeisi eitzah yi'utza b'zeir HaKadosh." In such a case, this is the prescribed plan cited in the Holy Zohar. Zohar Cheli Gimel Kuf Samaches Aleph, chapter, volume 3, 168a. The Omer Rav Mesifte Began Eden, what the head of the heavenly yeshiva said. That's how the Zohar puts it. He says like this. The Losolik Bey Nehera. Is a wooden beam. There's Losolik Bey Nehera. It won't ignite. What do? You have a piece of wood and you need to light a fire. What do you do if it's not igniting? Mevatshenle. Crush it. So bitush, strike it, crush it, and then it'll cause it to vait. Mevatshenle, chulu, he says, gufa, and the same is, the Zohar continues, the same thing with a human being. Gufa de leisolik bein nehera. If a body won't give out the light of its soul, Nehera de nishmasa, I should add. Body does not give out the light of its soul, like a wood that won't ignite. Mevatshenle. Crush it. And that'll bring out the light. But now we have to understand, what does that mean? That poses a lot of questions. What do you mean, crush it? You want to transform it, you don't want to hurt it. But you'd have Aaron Eitzah. So we're going to talk about now how you get rid of when there's an obstacle. So think about it just as a small introduction before the rest we'll learn next week, is you have to think of it this way. There's an obstacle, sometimes you need surgery. Sometimes you need something, you need to pulverize it with laser or other ways that we have methods today. Because you're not just dealing you're dealing with an outside force that's blocking it. How do you get rid of a blockage? And that we'll continue to learn in the next shiur. So you see here again how the Alter Rebbe, in again methodical and organized way, is addressing the blocks that we have in our lives. Simon B'Tev should be a good gebench to yar, elimination of all blockages, and only good things should shine through. That's the ultimate goal, to be ignited. Good Tavoch and a good yar. We're here every Mitzvah Shabbos, 10 p.m. Eastern Time, TanyaApplied.com.
This has been My Life, Tanya Applied with Rabbi Simon Jacobson. Please join us again next week. Visit ChasidusApplied.com for archived classes and more resources.